everyone, and welcome to Minorities and Hospitalities, How to Manage Mental Health During the Pandemic webinar session. We have a great program scheduled for you this morning with a phenomenal guest speaker, and we will be starting the session in about 3 minutes. So we will be prompt starting at 10:30. So again, welcome, and we appreciate you being a guest with us today. Hello again, everyone, and welcome again to Minorities and Hospitalities, Managing Your Mental Health During the Pandemic educational webinar session. We're happy to have you today, and we are starting promptly at 10:30. My name is LaShanta Vaughn. I'm a board member with Minorities and Hospitality, also referenced as MIH. We are happy to have you here today, and we have a great guest speaker whom I will be introducing here shortly. Before I do that, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping notes. You will see just myself as the moderator this morning on your screen, as well as our guest speaker, Tashana Merriweather, who I will introduce again here shortly. And then also Patrice, who is our Minorities and Hospitality President, who will be working behind the scenes to ensure a smooth webinar process today. The housekeeping notes I'd like to go over is your video is disabled, so you will not see any video of our participants today, as well as your sound has been muted. So that will take place throughout the webinar session today. Due to the sensitive nature of this webinar session, you can anonymously submit any questions that you have throughout the webinar session in the Q&A section of the screen at the bottom. So again, we will get through those questions and get those answered, hopefully for you by the end of our session. Now I want to introduce you to our featured speaker this morning, Tashana Merriweather. Tashana Merriweather is a licensed mental health counselor, a licensed clinical addiction counselor, and a national board certified counselor. She has a master's degree in mental health counseling and vocational rehabilitation from Ball State University. She has been in the mental health field for 19 years, providing therapeutic services and clinical leadership in a community mental health setting. Her current role is clinical program coordinator for the Boarderline Awareness Skills for Empowerment and Mood Clinics for Sandra Eskenazi Mental Health Center. She has experience with treating depression, anxiety, mood disorders, and complex personality disorders, just to name a few. Her focus is on overall wellness and providing mental health services to adults. Her goal is to empower people to be the best that they can be. Welcome, Tashana. We're really happy to have you this morning, and we'd like you to take over the session for now and tell us a little bit more about you and your experience in mental health.
Thank you, LaShante. I am really excited to have been asked to talk about mental health today. My passion, as the bio mentions, is really helping people to manage their wellness and being able to manage any mental health symptoms that come up. I have worked in the community mental health field for probably most of my career, working with adults and with some adolescents and some children throughout that time, but mostly with adults. As she mentioned, the clinic that I work in right now is focused mainly on adults, managing complex personality disorders, but then also any mood disorders that people may be experiencing. Of course, today we're dealing with a pandemic, and we know that that brings additional issues for people who may not have been diagnosed with a mental illness in the past, or if people have been managing their wellness and managing their symptoms, things may have kind of been brought to the surface a little bit more. So I'm excited to just even have this conversation and for people to get interested and for people to know that there are treatment options out there, and there are options to just maintain your overall wellness, whether you have a diagnosis or not. So this is where my passion really just does lie, for helping people in the mental health field. But also today, I'm happy to just have a conversation and hopefully for us to be able to answer questions and then just like reduce the stigma for people being able to have these conversations for mental health.
That's great, Tashana. And, as you said, this is a different day and age that we're living in today with the pandemic. And we just appreciate, everything that you will share with us. We realize, again, that this is a very sensitive, subject. Speaking of mental health and mental disorders. So, we, want to do everything that we can to provide our participants and their family members and their friends information on how they can, identify, what the symptoms are and also, get help. So we appreciate that. And, according to in 2018, according to the NAMI statistics, they say 1 in 5 adults in America will experience some type of mental disorder. That's a great deal, of individuals that will have issues and will need assistance like you provide, to help them through this process. But what I'd like to understand a little bit more is, how do you identify those signs and symptoms of mental illness? What are some of the red flags that maybe you can share with us today?
Of course, some of these things can be fairly subtle, or they may be overt. If you notice them in yourself or in other people, it's important to have that awareness. But I do want to share just some of the things that you may notice. Sometimes, and specifically now in the pandemic, feeling excessively worried or having fear about the future. And I don't mean, when I say that, I don't mean just like everyday daily worries about minimal things, but I mean when this is excessive and it kind of takes over and it controls your thoughts throughout the day, and you can't flip that switch to kind of shut those fears and those worries off. Feeling excessively sad or low, which may also come with like uncontrollable crying, or feeling like there's a sense of doom or a cloud following you all day long and throughout the day, and more days than not. Sometimes people have difficulty concentrating or may feel confused or have problems making decisions that once were very, very easy to make. But they're noticing, hey, what's going on with me? I feel like there's kind of a fog, or problems with my memory. Anything that feels extreme in mood changes, feeling like you're going from one extreme to the next. So perhaps feeling very, very happy in the morning, but maybe feeling sad in the afternoon, or alternating between those two at many periods throughout the day or throughout the week. And when I say extremes, of course, I do mean this can be from feeling suicidal to going to feeling very, very elated, or feeling very euphoric. Um, Prolonged feelings of irritability or anger. As you know, with most of the changes that are happening too now with the pandemic, some people are angry about decisions that are being made that may affect them and affect their lives and well-being. This is also when this carries over into specific anger outbursts, or saying harmful things or being aggressive when that usually wasn't part of your character or part of your personality. Avoiding friends or activities that people once enjoyed, isolating yourself or reducing your activity, making sure that if you have difficulties understanding or relating to other people, if before you were more social and you were outgoing and you felt like you could be empathetic to other people, but now you're thinking, I don't really having concern for others, or I just want to stay to myself and turn things in, instead of being able to relate to other people. Changes in sleep habits or feeling tired and having low energy. Of course, this could include anything that is very different. Of course, we know that some people are great with getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep and being able to power through their day, but some of us, like myself, need 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Any drastic change in that though, or like waking up frequently in the middle of the night with worry or concern, or feeling extremely restless and not being able to get to sleep in the first place, or sleeping too much, finding that you feel like you want to sleep all day, and aren't feeling as productive as you used to in that aspect. Changes in eating habits. This could be a lack of appetite, not feeling hungry at all, or emotional eating or overeating. So any drastic change with your eating. Changes in sex drive, difficulty perceiving reality, and this could include delusions or hallucinations, where someone may sense things or see things that don't really exist in objective reality. This also may be hard for people to really understand that this may be happening. And it can cause some anger and irritability also if other people are telling you that there's something going on or there's something quite odd. So that requires a different level of insight. But oftentimes people will just say, I just don't feel like myself there. And then next, the inability to perceive changes in your own feeling, behavior, or personality. And that is just that lack of insight. Yet again, people around you may say, I noticed something that is very, very different, or I noticed that you're not yourself, but at the same time, I can't quite put my finger on it, or I'm not sure what that is, or a feeling that you may have or notice in a loved one. So those are some general warning signs. I do want to say in children, some of those things may look different. Children may express more physical complaints sometimes, like for instance, saying, my tummy hurts, or I'm a little bit more tired, or I'm a little bit more fatigued, or you may notice that a child is a little bit more withdrawn than usual when they're usually playful and outgoing. So these things may look a little different in children. For older adults, they may, in noticing some of that confusion or the lack of concentration, you may see those things a little bit more.
Wow, that's a long list of, red flags, to just kind of, look for in, someone that you may know or, you may work with that may have, some of those issues that may lead up to, mental health issue or, disorder. So those are great things, to know and understand. And I just want to let, the participants know that in the chat box, I mean, there are several links that Tashana has shared with us prior to the start of the webinar that you can actually click onto and take note of in order to, learn more information about what we're discussing today. And then also we will email all of the participants at the end of the session with these, that we'll email them you all the link so that you'll have that information at your fingertips as well. And, going into, identifying these signs and symptoms of mental illness, Tashana, can you share with the audience what changes you've seen in, some of the patients that you're currently working with now during the start of the pandemic as to, what changes you may see prior to this taking place?
Mm-hmm. We've noticed that some people are, a lot of folks are more withdrawn, and we've noticed more depression and specifically overall more anxiety. A lot of that is coming from the concern of the unexpected. At this moment, we're still in the pandemic. Although things have kind of picked up, and some businesses have reopened. People are going out and getting services. They're going in. Some people are going out to eat. Some people are going in and getting their hair done or getting some of those things that they had put on hold when this all first started. We are still in the pandemic. People are still getting sick, and some places have closed, and some things are very, very different. So what we noticed in the beginning is people were a little bit more sad about the unexpected, but they were hopeful that this would resolve fairly quickly. Or there was kind of a sense of, okay, this will just be a very temporary thing. And as the months continue to go on to where we were still adapting our lives, I think we're noticing still now even more depression. The positive aspect of that right now, though, is we're seeing an increase of the people that are coming for services, that are reaching out. So if that stigma did exist before, I think some people are feeling it's more acceptable to go and talk to somebody about things that may have even existed before the pandemic.
That is a good thing. I mean, that is really great because, I think we all, know now that, I mean, it's not a negative thing to talk through, some of these issues if you're experiencing them and, and get help as much as you can. And then as far as the different types of mental disorders, can we, touch on, some of the types of mental disorders that are out there and perhaps some of the disorders that you see more often,
Mm-hmm.
Tashana?
Yes, yes. And kind of brief to say, a lot of times we see people who do come in with post-traumatic stress disorder, which means that some type of trauma has occurred that has brought on some of those anxiety symptoms that I mentioned. We in the past have also seen a lot of generalized anxiety disorders, which is an everyday, all day general worry overall for things that's excessive. Obsessive compulsive disorder is another anxiety disorder that we see often. And most of the time, these anxiety disorders are just manifested in different people in different ways. So that's, excessive organizing or cleaning or ordering things in a ritualistic way in hopes to manage the anxiety and fears that are occurring. We see a lot of depression, major depression in clients that come in right now. The difference between that and then bipolar disorder or the other unspecified mood disorders is then that elevated mood or that low mood that does alternate between those extremes. Another diagnosis that we often do see still too in our clinic um, would be, as I'm saying, I work with clients who have borderline personality disorder, which relates to an unstable mood or unstable sense of self in relation to the relationships that people have with other people. Right now, during the pandemic, as I mentioned, some of these things are kind of brought to the surface. I think right now people are examining how their relationships with other people were helpful or unhelpful due to the isolation or the people that they have been isolating with or without. Those are some of the general diagnoses that we usually do see across the board with children and adults right now.
And, speaking of, I know it's like you said, I mean, it's different, I'm sure, how you, you know, um, diagnose, a child versus an adult.
Mhm.
Can you tell us, I mean, how you identify mental illness, with, a child, and what the difference is as far as, the treatment, with an adult versus a child?
Mhm. So, how we do the assessments is someone would come in for an initial assessment, and whether it's a child or adult, we would gather information from the family and from the person who is needing the care to get a good historical perspective of everything that's happened and everything that's occurred that may be related to the presenting issue of why someone's coming in. So that includes a robust family history, all the way down to anything that's known from any generation or any previous family history, including the current symptoms, if there ever has been any family history of mental illness or substance use. After we gather all that information, then we do assessments to identify the strengths and the needs of an individual and build a treatment plan that everyone agrees upon, including the parents if it's children and caregivers and or supportive family members of the adults. So a lot of time and consideration is gone into that even initial assessment and then deciding then what types of services we would offer, whether that's individual therapy, family therapy, group therapy, and or even adding medication in as a method of treatment.
Wow. And so when you talk about, medication, I mean, do you, try to do everything that you can prior to, subscribing medication? Or again, it's just a situation where you have to, identify, the issues that, that individual is dealing with and try to, make the best decision based on, what they're dealing with?
Yes, that's actually correct. And we take a team approach on this as well. So after the intake assessments are completed, then the psychiatrist also is part of that treatment team. So we talk out each individual case to think about what may be best to offer and what that person needs. So they'd have a psychiatric evaluation to be evaluated for medication if the person is willing or interested. Sometimes that is based on, the formal diagnosis, whether that's going to be most helpful. Other times the therapy is going to be more helpful perhaps than the medication, but it is offered. The reason why I mentioned the treatment team and talking about that though is all of these things kind of go hand in hand. Like the best benefit to someone would be if they're on medication and receiving the therapy and or receiving all of the services that we would have to offer that are specific to them, not necessarily any of them to stand alone when someone's entering treatment.
Great, great. And, I know you've touched, greatly on, what mental illness looks like during the pandemic. And what I hear is that, more individuals are feeling like this is a good time for them to be able to identify if they have any signs or symptoms, or their family members have any signs or symptoms of mental illness. I mean, what does your day look like, Tashana, at this point? I mean, are you and your team, are you seeing, an influx of more patients? I mean, what is your day? Can you give us an idea of what your day looks like and your team's day look like currently?
Yes, we are seeing a more influx of patients right now. So in response to this, we have opened up the option for people to even just walk in to our clinic to be seen for the first time. And then we'll make sure that they're seen for an initial intake assessment to get treatment started, or even just start a conversation about what we have to offer in our clinic or otherwise. And sometimes that may not be, directly at my location, but we've opened that up at all of our locations for people to walk in and just get started to break that barrier down. And we are seeing a large influx of people who are coming in. I mean, I can say within the last 2 weeks, we've had 54 new people come in just by saying, hey, I just want to walk in and get treatment started. We always have a large amount of folks that would come in for treatment, but right now, as we've opened our clinics back up, and then also have the option for telehealth for people who just don't feel like it may be safe to come out, there are no limits to the amount of services that we can provide right now. Like, we have all hands on deck. Everyone's providing services right now, and from the time we enter the office until the time we leave, we are completely making sure we're helping people.
Oh, that's wonderful. And, thank you so much for, the service that you provide. I mean, it's amazing. And I'm sure that, as you said, this is your passion, and, helping individuals live the best lives that they can live. And for that, I thank you. It's, it's, funny how, when you talk about, being able to open your clinic up to walk-ins, yeah, as we all know, I mean, there's so many individuals that, don't have healthcare insurance, especially today, during the pandemic. I mean, so many have been furloughed or laid off. So how do you handle that? I mean, does your particular clinic, do you have a way where you can actually still service or offer services to those patients that may not have health care, to cover the cost?
hmm This is what I love about community mental health, and I will plug Sandra Eskenazi right now. We do not turn anyone away. We do not turn anyone away. If that means that we have to have them see our financial counselor who's on site or working from telehealth right now, we'll connect them with a financial counselor. But no matter what, we're going to see people. So we'll find a way. We will find a way and an option for them to be able to afford it. And like I said, if that's not us, and if we need to connect somebody to resources elsewhere, or if that just doesn't match up with what we have to offer, then that's what we'll do. We'll find that right then and there when they walk in.
Glad to hear that. That's great to know. Now, I will turn it over to Shauna to our Q&A. It looks like we have a question that came in, and I'll read this question and see if you can respond to this. It says, if you have a loved one who's still experiencing sadness, depression from the death of their child, but they don't think a therapist can help them, what can or should I do to support them? I've suggested group therapy or even just a support group with other parents who have lost children to gun violence, but he still declines. During the pandemic, it's been easier for him to isolate himself, which worries me. Any suggestions that you can give our participant that is asking this question?
hmm I think you're doing the right thing by continuing to encourage. Sometimes it's the methods in which we encourage other people to get in and try to get help. Right now, there are so many online options. What I would encourage is not to use the words maybe even group or individual therapy for the grief resources that may be out there, but say for instance, looking at finding an educational video online, and then sitting with the person and then kind of watching that with them, and then having a conversation afterwards to say, hey, did you find that interesting? And then later continuing to encourage them to go and speak with someone else about that, or helping people notice, you know what, you're not alone in what you're feeling, and it might just be helpful to have another set of people to talk about these things with. Their experience is going to be different based on what they're dealing with exactly, but knowing there are other people out there that will want to listen. So you being that listening ear, but then also thinking a little bit outside the box for how you approach that conversation and how you encourage that person to get into care. It may be that you offer to go with them too that first time.
Great. All great suggestions, that we don't think of because you're the expert, and that's all, great to think about that. And then we have a question. As working mothers, career professionals, wives, volunteers, etc., we're all balancing so much and wearing many hats. Can you offer suggestions for us busy ladies as to how we can take time for ourselves without feeling guilty that we're not spending that time with children, on work, etc.?
Oh goodness. Okay, I think about this every day. so, so I think it's really important to be kind to yourself. Be very, very kind to yourself, and know that whatever it is you're doing is enough, because you just said you're thinking about it also. So I can guess that you're putting forth strong efforts to try to maintain the household. Specifically, working outside of the house and or taking care of family and working inside the house, it's really important to not overschedule yourself. Right now, whatever you were doing before to maintain the household, you may have to take a step back from that, look and evaluate, and even making a list of what is important right now. What is important and what is going to be helpful to yourself, first of all, and then the rest of your family unit. Is that going to be you all preparing a meal together now when you used to prepare that meal, and then everybody sitting down and eating together and then just having a conversation to check in? Another piece to that would be to make sure that you are not isolating yourself, that you have other moms, other people who are in that same situation just to connect with every now and then. Whether that's over Zoom or whether that's just a phone call to check in, see how someone else is doing. I know specifically online and on Facebook, there's Indianapolis Moms, and they have them in other cities for those of you who may be in a different city. It's just your city and then moms, and it's kind of a blog and an informational that's supportive in that way of different resources too that are available. So I encourage you to take care of yourself, but then also you just know that you may not be able to do all of the things that you used to do, and that's okay.
Great, information. And, again, Indianapolis Moms, or whatever city you live in, you put that in the moms for references, on, maybe how to connect and support, get a support system, from others that are dealing with the same, challenges that you're dealing with. I know that a lot of parents today with this e-learning are having a lot of challenges that they're facing, even working from home, and, also, having the responsibility of ensuring that their children are e-learning properly. That is, a big issue at this point. So, try to, find those support systems that you can tap into in order to, get resources and, have, someone that you can talk to that's dealing with the same challenges that you are. Another question came in. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to throw into that also. Everybody's situation is different. Be careful about sharing with people and then feeling guilty that they're doing something different. Plenty of people are deciding to keep their children at home and do online learning or homeschool, and then some are deciding to send their children on to school. There may be lots of judgments around any decision that people are making, but just remember that people make different decisions based on their own family, and to go with your decision and what you feel is best and stay with that, and that's going to be okay, no matter what that is.
Non-judgment zone.
Mhm.
That's what
Yes.
we need. That's what we need at this time. There's another question that came in that states, how do you deal with someone that won't get the help for mental issues and alcoholism?
Mm, mm. Ultimately, it is going to rely on that person. They are going to have to, be willing to get the help themselves. And it may take for some life events to change enough for them to be affected enough to feel like they can go and get the help. And as I stated earlier, too, it's just going to be important to be able to know what those resources are and to help that person get them at the time that they are ready.
Great, great.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, trying to identify,
Hmm.
red flags and those symptoms, those potential, signs of symptoms of mental illness can be helpful. But I'm sure that, there are individuals that, they don't recognize, any signs or symptoms that they may have themselves and may not want, anyone else recognizing those as well. So I'm sure that that's tough to be able to get through, those type of deals there. We also have another question that just came in, Tashana. Research tells us that men and minorities are often very reluctant to seek mental health assessments. What advice can you offer to encourage the groups to get help?
Hmm. I think that is very true, actually. I think that has historically been true. I think we are seeing a shift and a change in the trend with that a little bit, not only just with the pandemic, with the recent racial injustice of people realizing that it is okay just to say that you're not okay and to not try to manage those things on your own. I think it's important, if it's hard to take that first step, for someone to perhaps seek out a provider that they're comfortable with. And that may be, calling and speaking to the person at the supervisor at the organization to say, hey, what do you have to offer, to have kind of an introductory conversation about what that may look like. If that is perhaps, for instance, an African American male seeing an African American male, then making sure that they're expressing that that's a preference or something that they may be interested in, that may help to make that person feel more comfortable, because those are things, of course, we can offer.
You recommend, Tashana, with in conjunction with that question, having a list or creating a list of, detailed questions to ask, a potential provider prior to making that phone call so that you can get all the information that you need in order to make, a decision, a decision that is, beneficial to yourself and to your family about a provider?
Mhm. I think that's a great idea. That's a wonderful idea. And then just knowing people that they do have that option to just call to say, what would it be like if I were there? What does this look like for me?
Great. And then there's another, another question. It basically said, I tried calling my husband's insurance to request a black male, and they said they couldn't identify who were black or white. So is there a list of minority therapists and perhaps an association of black therapists?
Hmm. Oh, not that I'm aware of. That could be something I could research a little bit more for you. Right now, I know that for us specifically, and then in our clinic, we do have options. So if you could take my contact information, we could talk about that a little bit more in detail.
Great, great. That's wonderful. And we'll make sure that that participant has all of your contact information. So right now, that's all of the questions that were in queue at this point. So we'll just continue on, with some other topics that we have. Um, my question to you is, can you talk a little bit about, or, answer a question about nutrition? How you eat, does that trigger, mental health, or can it help, you know, eliminate mental health issues?
Uh-huh. So our mind and our body is connected. right? You know, our heads are like sitting on top of our body. Although there's a stigma about mental health, there's really no separation between our mind and our body. Like there's absolutely none. So what we put in also can affect us. It can affect our mood. You know, it can affect all types of things. It can affect our energy level. So, you know, there are natural elements out there, and I'm no expert in those, although I am in favor of some of them, of, you know, supplements and things that are helpful to people um, in general. Eating healthy, though, is always going to be good, because if you avoid things that I call pick-me-ups, which are caffeine, you know, sugar, things that are the carbohydrates, so all of those things that help us emotionally eat, then some of those things may elevate your mood, and then you crash later, and they bring you down if you're, you know, adhering to an unhealthy routine on a regular basis. This is one of those things that we can manage, though, by exercising, you know, by taking care of yourself. It is going to definitely help with anxiety by being physical and moving, and the food that you eat will give you energy to be able to get up to do that. So that's probably the biggest tool and the biggest resource for all of us to maintain our wellness. Is thinking about what we're putting into our body, what we're doing to our body, and then how we can make that work for us.
Absolutely. We had one of the participants, just state that, coping skills are so important. Balance is key.
Mhm.
And, I agree, I agree with that. And, going into that, I mean, and talking about, health and nutrition and fitness, being key just to taking care of ourselves. Do you have any other triggers may that may, that may actually cause mental illness, or are there triggers that we can avoid that may cause mental illness? And in conjunction with that, I mean, perhaps you can talk a little bit more about, hereditary, mental illness. I mean, so, I mean, again, triggers that we can avoid if, there's no, signs of, family members or, past members having mental illness, and then talking about hereditary illnesses.
Mhm. I think that it's important to mention the hereditary factors, because in most instances there is nothing that people can do to like prevent an illness, specifically if there are hereditary factors. Most of the time, people can maintain the symptoms that come on based on what they are already experiencing. A lot of times it's trauma, or if it's loss, then there's nothing people necessarily did to bring those on, or those unexpected things that we can't prevent, but we can work towards trying to resolve some of that stuff a little more quickly than we had maybe so in the past. The way to really, really manage that is not waiting until you're in crisis mode to seek out help or to go and speak with someone. You wouldn't wait until you're almost about to pass out and be on your last leg if you noticed daily fatigue and daily chronic worry on the physical side. So I would like for people to think about their mental health in that same way. If you notice your tank is almost running on empty, you're going to need to start to fill that up. So I did want to point that out. If you do know that there are hereditary factors, though, then it's going to be really, really important to watch for those, and then to do those things. Somebody mentioned the word coping skills, to just kind of make sure you're adhering to a routine of managing your wellness. Some of these things can kind of creep on subtly or creep on slowly, and when you're noticing the symptoms. But if you get into a routine where you're maintaining your day, by that I do mean, say for instance, daily meditation, or daily gratitude journals, taking inventory of what is happening in your body and what physical symptoms that you notice, and then being able to adhere to a routine each day for your wellness would be helpful in trying to prevent things from getting worse.
And, you had mentioned, not waiting until, the ball drops, to get help, for mental illness. Are there, say for instance, you have, a mother and a father that had, mental illness or mental disorders. are there testing is there testing that one can take, even if they don't notice any signs? Or are there tests that they can take in order to determine if brain functions show mental illness, or is there something like that that they can do, be proactive in doing?
Mm-hmm. I will say I'm not necessarily an expert in the testing area. There are some things that people can do for, say, for instance, like thought disorders and things like that to make sure they're mindful of. Um, it's going to be really, really important to make sure that, as you're saying, we don't wait until we get to our last leg on that. But also just thinking in overall, without a diagnosis, maintaining those tips for wellness and trying to live a healthy life, and then trying to be insightful and in touch with your body. I wouldn't say that you're for sure going to have a diagnosis if there is a hereditary factor, because that may not affect you, or it may not affect you in the same way as it had a family member.
And then another question came in, Tashana. It says sexual addiction seems to be a topic that the media and people discuss more openly. Is this addiction considered mental illness?
So sexual addiction can manifest in different ways. Sometimes that co-occurs with some other things that would be a symptom of, say, for instance, another diagnosis. It could stand alone, because what's happening is there's a pervasive period of time where behavior is changed based on a reaction that's started with an emotion. So sometimes those things are just a little bit more acceptable to talk about, but there may be some other things going on at the same time, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And I know, sexual addiction is something that, some don't want to talk about, and so, being able to, be in your field, is it common that you have to break down those barriers with your patients in order to determine if there has been sexual, abuse, or, any type of struggles, in their past, in order to get to a solution to help or assist them?
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is common. Since it's uncomfortable at times to talk about, there may have to be an organic conversation that happens, and it's very important to make sure the comfort level is there between the provider and then between the person that you're working with. So it may take some time to develop a relationship before some of those things are discussed.
That and that just that just leads into talking about, again, I know we've talked about how nutrition could be something that we could work on, and in fitness, but are there steps that we can take to control our stress levels and better manage our mental illness if we do have signs, or if we have been diagnosed with a disorder?
Mm-hmm. Yes. We talked a little bit then about some of those nutritional things and making sure you're taking care of your body and taking inventory of what you're eating, and what you're drinking and how those things do affect you. Another really, really important thing to do is surround yourself with good people. Right now, as I said, in the pandemic, people are taking inventory of who is around them and how those people affect them. There may have been some toxic people around you that you didn't notice until, things got worse and you realized you needed some more support, or you realized, hey, you know what, I had these friends that most of the time when they have conversations, then those conversations are negative, or they're just not as positive as they need to be right now to be helpful. In turn, you want to make sure that you're providing that as well. So you're monitoring yourself to notice that negativity doesn't creep in enough to where that's the overall conversations that you're having with other people, but making sure you keep people around you that are positive, or you're feeding yourself with positive things that are around you. In that aspect too, that's limiting social media when it's not helpful, because we know there can be times when there's no filter to, if you're scrolling through your Facebook page, or looking at Instagram, or looking at something that's on social media, you have no idea what someone else is going to put out there to be able to censor that. So if you're not feeling very well, you may want to go through and only choose positive inspirational pages or things that would make you happy or things that you know that would evoke a positive energy for you. There may be people that you want to say, you know what, right now I'm going to put on those conversations with them on hold. I'm not even going to engage in those conversations. And that may be people that are, family members as well. So knowing that you have the option to not do that. Another good way is to give of yourself and volunteer. And I know that sounds like the opposite of what some people may want to do when they're not feeling well. But if you're volunteering and you're giving back, then that establishes a sense of meaning and also a connectedness to other people. But giving you that feeling like you can do something about it, that you're in control of something, and noticing that you're helping someone else. Mindfulness is helpful. We talk about maybe daily meditation in those resources. I mentioned some of the apps that are free and that are helpful. So guided meditations, deep breathing, taking a moment to listen to positive music or podcasts or anything that may inspire you. This also could be prayer, having a prayer routine or tapping into a spiritual source of any type. Setting realistic goals. I mentioned earlier, not overscheduling yourself. You know, you can get busy and want to try to go back to your old routine of whatever that may have been. But right now, some of those things aren't available for us, and that may be a good thing. So making sure you're not overscheduling yourself and overbooking yourself and feeling like a pinball and kind of having to do everything all at the same time. Break up the monotony too. Like schedule a Zoom, go to a park and take a walk to a place where you haven't been ever or recently, or finding options to still social distance while you're able to do that are, local or right here in town. But it's always helpful to have something to look forward to. So when you have something to look forward to, that propels you forward. Avoid alcohol or drugs. Of course, some people will say, I'm going to be comfortable having a glass of wine or a glass of beer at the end of the day. What I mean by this too is being excessive with that or turning to that as something to rely on, because of course that may create additional issues or kind of delay the feelings that you may need to express. Get the help when you need it. We've mentioned that help may come in different forms. That could be, in a social group that's found online, or that could come in the form of traditional help, traditional therapy, or traditional medications. But knowing that help is available and not waiting, of course, until you're feeling like you can't move forward any longer before you wait to get that help.
Those are all great, just great, suggestions, great information, things that, you normally wouldn't think about, until, you speak with an expert such as yourself. And you mentioned social media. That is huge. I mean, and I know that, most of, your, focus is, on adult mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
However, I mean, there are adults that, all day long, I mean, social media is what they do. I mean, Facebook, Instagram, and, just trying to, create this persona for themselves. So how do you, how do you work with, a patient that, have difficulties, with social media and what they're reading, or what information they're getting, whether, like you said, there's no filter there. And we know that bullying goes on through social media. Kids and adults, they have taken their lives because of that. So how do you and your team manage, trying to, eliminate social media, from patients that it's harmful for?
We have strongly encouraged people sometimes at times to just take a break from it altogether. Just take a break from it altogether. There are some things out there that look like they may be helpful resources or maybe helpful groups that have not been vetted. And we've had to tell people, hey, you know what, this is never going to be healthy for you to join that group, and just explain the benefits of other options to them, because that's going to be critical. NAMI has kind of taken the opportunity to go through and look at some of the things that are healthy and that are positive groups for people. So we utilize them a lot. for resources to steer people in a different direction when social media is causing some problems. But a lot of times it may be that someone just needs to take a complete break from that completely.
We've got another question that came in, and it says, can we train ourselves to be more mentally fit like we do to train ourselves to be physically fit?
Ah, so that's interesting that you say it that way, because yes, I think that they are the same. They are kind of one and the same. Those same thing, the same framework that you use to think about how you're going to keep your body physically fit would be the just adding additional tools for your mental wellness too. And the same efforts that you put forward to thinking about, like, say, for instance, an exercise routine, if you set your own personal goal to lose weight or to eat nutritiously, would be the same things that you would do for your mental health. And those things help in both areas because there really is no good separation. So if you're always in touch with yourself and thinking, okay, what am I really experiencing with my emotions? And then maintaining that, or having the insight to say, okay, I know this is what's happening now with me, and doing something on a routine basis to manage those things, then you're going to notice a difference. So yes.
I know, we've talked about, isolation, being, one of the signs and symptoms of mental, illness. My question to you is, what are you seeing in seniors? I mean, our seniors, I think were and continue to be more affected, through this pandemic more than ever. Especially, seniors that are in, homes or centers that do not allow any type of, guests or, visitors at this time. And then, also, them being, more prone to, catching the virus and not being, strong enough to overcome it. So, I mean, what do you have any special programs or any information, for seniors that are facing mental illness or disorders?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Sandra Eskenazi Mental Health Center has an older adult services clinic specifically for older adults. And then also in other clinics, we do have older adults specifically because it's not based on just if you're a certain age, then you have to go, to the certain place, but that does exist. I think we are seeing a little bit of an increase in fear in our older adults because there's no control over what other people around them may be doing. With that isolation, then you definitely have to get creative. If you have older people in your life and or have the opportunity to get out and do a social distance visit or reach out to people that are older, then it's going to make the world of a difference in helping to reduce that isolation. So if you know someone who's older, who's having to stay in, even a phone call or a drive-by visit outside with your PPE with the mask on, it's going to help. It's going to make the world of a difference and also give them something to look forward to as well.
I'm thinking of, going back to, I know you had mentioned that you have, other, options to treat patients that are maybe, afraid, to come out currently. They just don't feel safe enough at this time, as well as, those that may need assistance, in other aspects than in person. Your virtual, assistance. Can you share what that looks like as far as being, virtual, in a virtual setting? It's again very sensitive nature here, and a very sensitive topic. So can you share what that looks like, Tashana? And then after that, can you share with us what protocols you and your clinic currently have in place to keep the patient safe when they're visiting in person?
Absolutely. So telehealth has increased because of the pandemic, which I think is a good thing because even before this, one of the big barriers was transportation or just like an unexpected illness or tiredness for someone to be able to come in to our clinic. Right now, we offer the option to do complete telephone sessions, where someone is connecting over the phone at the time of their therapy session and they're doing therapy just completely over the phone. The same thing that they would have done in the office, but only an audio version. But we also offer the other option to do exactly what we're doing now. We don't use Zoom, it's over a confidential system called WebEx, where you could connect audio and have your session in the same manner in which we're doing this presentation today. So that you would still have the option to view the person that you're talking to and see them, and feel as connected as you possibly could through this video connection. And those, we're doing initial assessments that way, and we're also doing all of the individual therapy sessions that way. Some of the other clinics within our organization are even doing some group sessions in this manner and giving everyone that opportunity to still try to feel connected. In reference to people who are coming into our clinic, we have left no stone unturned in the thoughts of how we're going to keep ourselves safe. So everyone's required to wear a mask, and that's a surgical mask. When they're coming in the building, we have screening questions when people come in to see if they may have experienced any symptoms, and that is for safety, but also to help people get connected to testing if that's what they need, or a medical provider as they're coming into the door. We are still using the 6 feet rule in our office. So our waiting room is designed to be 6 feet apart. There are signs on the floor that tells people where to stand. We have plexiglass up where when people are in the offices, we've made sure the offices are arranged so that there's an opportunity for 6 feet apart. We even have an extension of our waiting room in our office to make sure that there's enough space if we have an influx of the walk-in clients that come in to be able to still socially distance. We have routine cleanings throughout the day by a professional cleaning service that comes in and cleans all of our chairs and doorknobs and handles and make sure things that specifically need to be disinfected are disinfected. And then if still those things don't allow for people to be comfortable, that's when we can offer the telehealth and the video options.
That is wonderful. It sounds like you have, crossed every T and dotted every I. That is great to know. And Eskenazi as a whole, has a great reputation, in the city of Indianapolis and all over. So that it's great to hear those type of protocols, being enforced. When, you have an influx of, patients coming in, off the street. And then, the, virtual, opportunities, to be able to help those that, again, are still not, feeling safe enough to, to come out in person is great to know. And then just making sure that, our seniors are being recognized and, being served is very positive to me. Now it looks like, we do not have any other questions coming in. Tashana, I wanted to give you, one last opportunity to talk about, anything else that you may want, the participants to know about mental health, or about, anything that's pertinent information. And then also about, again, your clinic, Eskenazi Clinic. So let us know before we, end the session. And also let us know if you would like, or if you mind our participants today, if they would like to reach out to you, if that is, something that you would encourage, and if so, what would be the best mode of communication that they would be able to, reach out to you?
Mm-hmm. I do want people to know that our clinic also has some non-traditional hours. So we are serving those who would work traditional, 8 to 5, because there's at least one night a week we're open until 8 o'clock. There are other nights we're open until 6:30, and we usually are there at 8 o'clock in the morning. As we mentioned, there are telehealth options. There are the audio and video options for the telehealth, and then anyone could walk in between the hours of 9 to 2 to be able to be seen on that same day for our clinic. We, if we're not the best fit, say for instance, or best location, then we will make sure you get to where you need to go. Like, as I say, whether that's us or whether that's another location, we will help you navigate that, to make sure your needs are met and to make sure you feel very, very comfortable with receiving the services that you need. If that needs to just be a conversation before you want to enter treatment, I would be perfectly fine for people to reach out to me to ask questions about that or just questions in general. That's perfectly fine. My office number I can make sure is provided, and then also email is perfectly fine as well. And I see that that's come up in the chat. So that is okay to reach out. My main takeaway that I want you to remember today too is, if you didn't before, I want you to think about mental health and wellness the same as you did about physical health and wellness too, that our mind and body is very, very connected. So there really is no separation, but also to be kind to yourself during this pandemic. Know that other people are experiencing things, whether they are talking about them or whether they have been reluctant to go and get treatment, then people are still experiencing things. If you can open up a conversation, the more that we as individuals and specifically as minorities talk about mental health and mental wellness, the more it reduces the stigma of that, and the more other people will realize that help is possible and that it has been around for years and it is acceptable for us to get that help. So, and that's for anyone. Like I said, we are here, and just be kind to yourself and be kind to other people.
That is all great advice. Great. And Tashana, exactly where's your clinic located at here in Indianapolis?
So we're in Speedway. We're at 5610 Crawfordsville Road, right in the corporate square business complex.
Okay, great.
610 Crawfordsville Road, and we're at Suite 2201, right at the edge of the city. And as I said, we're open from 8 most days until 6:30, but on Tuesdays we're open from 8 to 8.
Great. Thank you for that information. And I do want to let all the participants know that this is a recorded educational session today, and it will be on the MIH website. I'd say no later than Tuesday of next week. If you did not catch the entire session and you want to do so, it will be listed on again on the MIH organization's website. Tashana, we thank you again for your time, for your expertise, and for your professionalism today on a subject that is very delicate. This is something that I think we can all understand very closely and learn from, and we just appreciate you so much today, and we appreciate all the participants. And be looking for the next Minorities in Hospitalities educational webinar that will be next month. We don't have a set topic as of right now, but be on the lookout for that. And again, thank you all for joining us today and spending the hour with us. And again, thank you, Tashana, for everything.
Thank you for having me. I hope that it was helpful.
Very helpful. And thank you for all the resources as well. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.